Why is this useless leech here? Get out! My brother's wife shouted at me in front of everyone. I just smiled and said, okay, stay with me till the end, because what happened after that night still feels unreal. And maybe, just maybe, it'll remind someone out there that quiet people aren't always weak. That evening, the dinner table was full. My brother Malik had invited some of his friends, trying to show off his new house and his perfect wife, Tasha. I had been living with them for 2 months after losing my job at the hospital. I was a nurse, but the hospital had downsized, and suddenly, I had nowhere to go. Malik had offered me a place to stay, but from the day I moved in, Tasha made sure I knew I wasn't welcome. She rolled her eyes when I cooked, sighed loudly when I walked in the living room, and told her friends that I was still figuring life out. I offered to pay rent, even a little, but she laughed and said, "We're not running a charity home." Malik never said a word. He'd just smile awkwardly and tell me to ignore her. That night, everything boiled over. I had just brought dessert to the table when Tasha slammed her hand on the table and stood up. "Why is this useless leech here?" she yelled, pointing straight at me. "She eats our food, sleeps under our roof, and acts like she belongs." Everyone froze. Malik didn't even look at me. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't say a word. Tasha stormed off and came back with my suitcase. She dragged it to the door, opened it, and threw it outside. "Get out," she hissed. The silence in the room was heavy. My heart felt like it had cracked open, but I knew arguing would only feed her pride. So I smiled softly and said, "Okay." Then I picked up my bag and walked out. As I stepped into the cold night, I heard her laugh behind me. It stung more than anything else. But what no one knew was that inside my small bag wasn't just my clothes. It was proof. Proof of the lies, the money transfers, and the fake story Tasha had been feeding my brother for months. I didn't cry that night. I sat in my car, hands shaking, and whispered to myself, "Not yet, but soon." Because while Tasha thought she had thrown me out for good, she had no idea that she'd just opened the first page of her own downfall. And that was the last time anyone called me a useless leech. Because sometimes silence is just the sound of revenge waiting for its turn. Growing up in South Carolina, Malik was more than just my older brother. He was my best friend, my protector, and the only man I truly trusted. Our mother, Naomi Brooks, raised us alone after our father walked out. She didn't have much, but she gave us what mattered: loyalty, love, and the belief that family should always stand together. Malik used to say, "No matter what happens, I'll always protect you, Z." I believed him. For most of my life, that promise kept me safe. Until Tasha came along. I still remember the first day Malik introduced her. She walked into Mom's small living room wearing expensive heels that clicked like they owned the floor. Her perfume filled the room before her smile did. She was beautiful, confident, polished, but behind that smile, something about her eyes made me uneasy. When she shook my hand, her grip was tight, her gaze sharper than her manicured nails. Mom, kind as always, welcomed her with open arms. I, on the other hand, stayed quiet. At first, Tasha pretended to like me. She asked about my nursing job, complimented my cooking, and even said, "You're lucky to have a brother like Malik." But slowly things shifted. She began visiting less often when I was around. Malik started missing our weekly family dinners, saying Tasha didn't feel well or they were busy. When they got married, I barely recognized my brother. The warmth in his eyes had turned cautious, as if every word he spoke was being measured. When I lost my job and asked to stay with them, I thought it would be temporary. Malik agreed instantly. Tasha smiled politely and said, "Of course, family first." But that smile faded fast. It started small, my clothes going missing from the laundry, my food disappearing from the fridge. Then came the comments. "You really should start looking harder for a job," she'd say sweetly, loud enough for Malik to hear. She told him I stayed up late, talking to men online, even though I was filling out job applications. One night, I came home to find my things moved from the guest room into the storage area. She said, "I just thought you'd like more privacy." Malik started looking at me differently, as if he was questioning everything I did. The same brother who once told me I could always count on him now avoided eye contact when Tasha spoke about me. It hurt more than I could say. But one evening, as I sat on the edge of my bed, I realized something. This wasn't random. Tasha wasn't just mean, she was strategic. Every word, every act, every lie was designed to erase me from my brother's life. She wanted to control everything, even his love for me. And that night, I promised myself I wouldn't let her win. Not yet. But I'd be ready. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon when I heard my name from the living room. I had been in the kitchen, quietly washing dishes, trying to stay out of Tasha's way like always. Her voice was low but sharp. "Malik, your sister took money from our joint account. I told you she's been using us." My hands froze in the sink. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. Then Malik's voice rose, angry and full of disbelief. "What? Daniel would never. Wait, how do you know?" Tasha sighed like she was the victim. "I saw the transfer myself. A few $100s gone. Who else has access, Malik?" "It's her. She probably thought we wouldn't notice." My heart started to pound. I'd never even touched their account. My name wasn't on it. Still, I heard the anger in Malik's tone turn cold. I dried my hands and stepped into the living room. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaking. Tasha turned slowly, eyes full of fake pity. "Daniel, don't pretend. It's sad enough you'd do this. We were helping you." "I didn't take anything," I said firmly. "You can check the records." Malik stood up. "So you're calling my wife a liar now?" "Yes," I whispered. "Because she is." That's when he snapped. His voice echoed through the house. "You've been living under my roof, eating our food, and now you steal from us?" His words hit harder than any slap. My chest tightened as I tried to explain, but he didn't want to hear it. Tasha stood behind him, tears streaming, crocodile tears. "Malik, please," I begged. "You know me. I'd never do that. Just look at the records." But he didn't. He grabbed my suitcase, the same one Tasha had thrown out before, and tossed it toward the door. "Get out, Daniel. I don't want to see your face again." The rain was pouring by the time I stepped outside. The wind whipped against my face, mixing with the tears I refused to wipe away. I stood there, drenched, watching the door close behind me. The same brother who once promised to protect me had just believed a lie without even blinking. I walked to my car and sat there for hours. My clothes were soaked, my hair clinging to my face, and my heart felt like it had cracked open. I wanted to scream, to run back and make him see the truth. But I didn't. I just stared through the fogged windshield, listening to the sound of the rain beating against the glass. That night, I realized something had died. Not just my trust, but the bond we'd built since childhood. I lay in my car, staring at the ceiling, whispering to myself, "One day, they'll know the truth." My hands clenched around the steering wheel. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was purpose. That night, the seed of revenge began to grow. The basement apartment smelled faintly of damp wood and dust, but it was mine. After weeks of sleeping in my car, the small space felt like a blessing. The ceiling was low, the heater barely worked, and the single window looked out onto a cracked brick wall. But at least it was quiet. I told myself I'd start over here. No matter how small, no matter how lonely. I found a job at a small community clinic not far from the apartment. It wasn't the fancy hospital I used to work in, but it gave me a sense of purpose again. I worked long shifts, sometimes double, just to keep my mind busy. I didn't talk much to anyone, just did my work, smiled politely, and went home. People saw a calm woman. No one knew I was still bleeding inside. One evening, as I was organizing patient files, Dr. Elena Voss, one of the senior doctors, walked in. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with kind eyes that saw more than most people said. "You work too much," she said softly. I smiled faintly and shrugged. "Keeps me from thinking too much." She looked at me for a moment longer, then said, "Sometimes pain can build something new, if you let it." I didn't respond, but her words stayed with me. Days turned into weeks. I started saving every dollar I could, skipping coffee runs, walking to work even in the rain. Slowly, the weight of the past began to lift. I wasn't healed, but I was surviving, quietly, steadily. One Saturday, I saw a flyer at the clinic asking for volunteers at a charity event for women's health. It was being hosted downtown by a local foundation. I signed up. Helping others felt right, like maybe I could turn my pain into something good. At the event, I helped set up tables, handed out brochures, and guided patients. It was busy and loud, but the energy was positive. Then, while sorting donation envelopes, I overheard two women talking nearby. One of them mentioned a name I hadn't heard in months, Tasha. My heart stopped. "She used to work at our firm," one woman said. "Tasha Barnes, or Brooks now, I think. She almost got the company shut down after that embezzlement scandal." I froze, pretending to fix a stack of papers. "Yeah," the other replied. "She changed her name and disappeared. Lucky she didn't end up in jail." My pulse was racing. Tasha Barnes. So she had a past she never told anyone about. A scandal, money, a new name. It all started to make sense. I smiled quietly to myself as I packed the last of the envelopes. The universe had finally whispered a clue my way. For months, I had thought I'd lost everything. But now, standing under the bright lights of that charity hall, I realized something I hadn't lost. I had just started gathering what I needed to win. The name Tasha Barnes echoed in my head for days after the charity event. I couldn't shake it off. Every time I thought of her smile, that perfect, polished grin she used to wear while humiliating me, I wondered what else it was hiding. I started digging, quietly, like someone tracing the shape of a wound they'd finally stopped being afraid to touch. Late one night, I sat in my small basement room with my laptop open and a cup of cheap coffee beside me. I typed Tasha Barnes Real Estate South Carolina into the search bar. At first, nothing came up. Then I added fraud. Suddenly, articles began to appear. My breath caught. Local real estate employee fired after financial scandal. The article didn't have her picture, but the name, the timeline, and the city all matched. Fired for embezzling client funds. Never charged, but quietly dismissed before she vanished. I leaned back in my chair, my heart racing. She had changed her name after that. From Barnes to Brooks. She didn't just marry my brother for love. She married him for a new identity. The next day, I took a day off from the clinic and drove to the old firm's address listed online. The building was now a small law office. When I introduced myself to the receptionist and said I was researching an old employee, she hesitated, then called for someone named Denise. A few minutes later, a woman in her 40s came out, her expression curious. "You said you're looking into Tasha Barnes?" I nodded carefully. "We worked together once. I just wanted to reconnect." Denise's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Reconnect? Good luck. That woman nearly ruined us. She had everyone fooled, fake invoices, ghost accounts, even tried to pin it on another coworker. She disappeared before the audit was finished." I thanked her, trying to hide the storm brewing inside me. As I walked back to my car, the truth hit like thunder. The money Tasha accused me of stealing, it was her pattern. It wasn't new. It was her way of surviving. Lie, steal, then blame someone else. That night, I printed everything I found, the articles, the employment records, the statements. I even managed to access some public financial filings linking her old firm to an investigation that was never closed. I slipped all of it into a brown folder and locked it in my drawer. But I didn't rush to Malik. Not this time. I didn't want to just prove my innocence. I wanted her to crumble under her own lies. I wanted her mask to fall in front of everyone. As I stared at her picture on Malik's social media page, smiling in another designer dress, I whispered to myself, "Keep smiling, Tasha. Because soon, that smile will be the only thing you have left." And for the first time in months, I felt calm, like revenge had found its rhythm. Months passed, and life slowly settled into a strange calm. I kept my distance from Malik and Tasha, though every so often, I'd hear bits of news through mutual friends. At first, it was small things, Malik missing payments, Tasha looking stressed at gatherings, whispers of tension behind their perfect smiles. I didn't need to interfere. Life had already started writing its own justice. One afternoon, while I was restocking supplies at the clinic, I got a message from an old neighbor. "Hey, did you hear about Malik's business? Something's going on with his accounts." I froze for a moment, then typed back casually, "No, what happened?" Apparently, several of Malik's clients had pulled out after discovering inconsistencies in his invoices. Some payments had gone missing, and the business was being investigated. My first instinct was to feel sorry for him, but then I remembered the night he kicked me out in the rain. The memory burned, but the pain felt lighter now, replaced by quiet understanding. A few days later, I saw Tasha at a grocery store parking lot. She didn't notice me. She was on the phone, pacing, her voice sharp. "I told you, it's Malik's fault. He can't handle finances. Don't blame me for his mess." Her nails dug into her palm as she ended the call and slammed her car door. For the first time, she didn't look powerful. She looked cornered. I stood there for a moment, watching her drive away, then whispered to myself, "Cracks always show." Weeks later, Malik called. I almost didn't answer, but something inside me wanted to hear his voice. When I picked up, it was quiet for a long moment before he spoke. "Z," his voice sounded tired, broken. "I don't know where to start." I said nothing. "Tasha's been acting strange. Money's missing. Clients are threatening to sue. I think she's been lying to me. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. Lying? About what, Malik? You sure you're not just misunderstanding her? You believed her easily before. He sighed heavily. I know I failed you. I was blind. I need your help. You were always better with numbers and records. Please. I let the silence stretch. For years, I had been the one begging him to believe me, and now the roles had reversed. Some lessons, I finally said, need time to settle. He didn't speak again. I could hear him breathing, hear the weight of his guilt through the phone. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know, I said softly. But sorry doesn't fix everything. Then I hung up. That night, I stood by my window, looking out at the quiet street below. I wasn't angry anymore. I was patient. Malik's world was collapsing, and Tasha's lies were unraveling faster than she could patch them. I didn't have to rush justice. It was already on its way, steady, silent, and unstoppable. When Malik's message came, I almost laughed. Hey Z, it's my birthday next weekend. I'd really like it if you came. Let's put the past behind us. For a few minutes, I just stared at the text. It felt strange, seeing his name light up my phone again. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the part that had waited quietly for truth, knew this was the moment I'd been preparing for. I typed back, sure, Malik. I'll be there. The night of the party, I stood in front of my mirror in a sleek, navy blue dress. It wasn't fancy, but it fit perfectly, strong, simple, confident. I tied my braids neatly and added a touch of lipstick. My reflection didn't look like the woman who once cried in her car. I looked calm, collected, and ready. The event was at their house, the same house I'd been thrown out of months ago. I parked across the street, took a breath, and walked in. Music played softly. The guests smiled politely as I entered, most of them surprised to see me. Malik came forward, hugging me tightly. I'm really glad you came, he said. His eyes looked tired but genuine. Then came Tasha. She approached with that perfect fake smile. Daniel, she said sweetly. So nice of you to join us. Of course, I replied, returning her smile. Family, right? Her jaw tightened, but she turned away quickly, fussing over the guests. The dinner went smoothly for a while, laughter, glasses clinking, Malik trying to act like everything was normal. Then came the toast. Malik stood up, holding his glass high. I want to thank my wife, he said, his voice shaking a little, for being my rock through tough times. We've faced challenges, but she's held everything together. Everyone clapped. I smiled. Slowly, I rose from my seat. That's beautiful, Malik, I said softly. But since tonight is about honesty, why don't we toast to that instead? The room went quiet. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small flash drive. I brought something special, a little gift. I walked to the TV and plugged it in. The screen lit up. First came bank statements showing transfers from Malik's business accounts to secret ones under Tasha's old name, Tasha Barnes. Then emails from her previous job, conversations about missing funds, and finally, the official police report from her real estate scandal. Gasps filled the room. Malik turned pale. Tasha froze, her smile disappearing completely. This is fake, she shouted, but no one believed her. I stood there, calm as ever. I told you once to check the records, I said quietly. You didn't then, so I brought them to you now. Tasha's voice cracked as Malik stared at her in disbelief. Guests started whispering, some even recording. I just lifted my glass and said, to honesty. Then I took a slow sip, watching her world collapse, the same way she'd once watched mine. The room fell into stunned silence as the final document appeared on the screen. Tasha's signature beside the fake business, name she'd used to siphon Malik's company funds. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the projector and Tasha's trembling breath. Then, like the crack of thunder before a storm, the whispers began. Is that her? Oh my God, look at the date. She's been stealing from him? Malik stood frozen, his glass still in his hand. His face had gone pale, the confident smile from moments ago replaced with confusion and horror. Tasha, he whispered, tell me this isn't true. Tasha laughed, a sharp, desperate sound that didn't reach her eyes. These are lies. Daniel is trying to destroy us, she shouted, her voice echoing through the hall. She's obsessed with you, Malik. She made this up because she can't stand seeing us happy. I stepped forward, calm, every movement deliberate. Really? I said softly, pulling another paper from my purse. Then maybe you can explain this, your old passport, under the name Natasha Barnes. Same photo. Same face. The same woman who disappeared from her last company after embezzling over $200,000. A loud gasp rippled through the guests. Malik looked at the photo, then at Tasha. His voice broke when he spoke again. You told me your past was clean. You said Zanil lied about you. You said she. Tasha snapped. Her voice rose, her hands shaking. I did everything for you. For us. You were nothing when I met you. Nothing. And now you stand there, believing her? You're all jealous, every one of you. She grabbed her wine glass and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, crimson wine splattering like blood. Guests screamed and backed away. I didn't move. I just stood there, watching her unravel, the woman who had destroyed my peace now clawing at her own. Enough, Malik said weakly. His voice trembled as he sat down, holding his head in his hands. Enough, Tasha. Sirens echoed outside before anyone could speak again. Within minutes, 2 uniformed officers entered. One of them looked at me and gave a small nod, the signal we had agreed upon earlier. Natasha Barnes? One officer said firmly. You're under arrest for financial fraud, identity theft, and obstruction of justice. Tasha's knees buckled. No, you can't do this. Malik, tell them, she screamed as they cuffed her wrists. Malik didn't move. He couldn't. His eyes were glassy, his lips trembling. I don't even know who you are anymore, he whispered. As they led her out, her cries fading down the hallway, the room slowly came back to life. Guests whispered in disbelief. Malik just sat there, collapsed into his chair, the truth crushing him from the inside out. And I simply turned, picked up my purse, and walked toward the door, silent but victorious. Rain fell softly that evening, tapping against the narrow windows of Zanil's small apartment. She sat on her worn couch, sipping lukewarm tea, when a knock echoed through the quiet. For a moment, she thought she imagined it. But when it came again, slow, hesitant, she knew exactly who it was. Opening the door, she found Malik standing there. His once proud shoulders sagged beneath the weight of regret. His eyes, those same eyes that had once looked at her with love, then with rage, now held nothing but sorrow. He looked smaller somehow, as though life had finally forced him to face himself. Z. His voice cracked on her name. Can I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered, glancing around the small space that had become her sanctuary. There was no judgment in his eyes now. Only the kind of shame that comes when you finally realize the truth about yourself. I saw everything again, he began, his hands trembling. The reports, the bank statements, everything you showed that night. I don't even know how to begin to say I'm sorry. Zanil didn't interrupt. She simply watched him, silent and calm, the same way she had learned to be through nights of pain and betrayal. Malik sank onto the edge of the couch, his voice breaking. You were always there for me, Z. Ever since we were kids, after Mom died, I promised I'd protect you. And instead, I became the one who hurt you most. I believed her lies. I threw you out like a stranger. God, I can't forgive myself. He covered his face with his hands, sobbing, loud, raw sobs that came from deep within the part of him that had been rotting with guilt. Zanil took a long breath. You know what hurts the most, she said softly. It's not that you believed her. It's that you never looked for the truth. You taught me that loyalty should never be blind, Malik. I had to learn that the hard way. He looked up, eyes red and swollen. Please come home. I can fix it, I swear. I'll make it right. But Zanil shook her head slowly. There's no home to go back to, she said. You and Tasha burned it down long before I left. I've built something new now. It's small, but it's mine, and it's peaceful. He tried to speak, but his voice caught. He nodded instead, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. Zanil stood, walked to the door, and opened it. The evening air rushed in, cool and damp. Take care of yourself, Malik, she said. And learn to see people for who they are, not who you want them to be. He rose, his movements slow, defeated. As he stepped out into the rain, he turned once more to look at her. But she had already closed the door. Inside, Zanil exhaled deeply. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like freedom. The morning sun streamed through the blinds of Zanil's new office, casting soft golden lines across her desk. She sat quietly, signing a few reports for the women's health outreach program she now managed. Her name, Zanil Brooks, Director of Community Wellness, was engraved on a small plaque that made her smile every time she saw it. It had been almost 2 years since that night, the night she was called a useless leech and thrown out into the rain. Back then, she'd thought it was the worst moment of her life. But sitting here now, surrounded by peace, purpose, and people who respected her, she realized it had been the moment that changed everything. Her phone buzzed softly with a message from one of the interns. "Thank you for believing in me, Ms. Brooks." Daniel's eyes warmed. She remembered when she, too, had been desperate for someone to believe in her. Back then, she had begged for kindness from those who never deserved her loyalty. Now she had learned to give that kindness to herself first, and then to others who truly needed it. She leaned back in her chair, letting her mind drift for a moment. She could still hear Tasha's voice echoing in her memory. "Why is this useless Leech here? Get out!" And her own calm reply, "Okay." At the time, that single word had felt like defeat. But now she understood. It wasn't surrender. It was the quiet beginning of something powerful. When she walked away that night, drenched and humiliated, she hadn't just walked out of a house. She'd walked out of the version of herself that kept seeking approval. She'd walked into her own story. Her brother Malik had tried to call a few times over the past months. She always answered with kindness, but never with attachment. Forgiveness didn't mean returning. It meant freeing herself from the weight of the past. Malik was rebuilding too, or trying to. That was his journey. Hers was already in motion. Everywhere around her now, she saw proof of how far she'd come. The clinic filled with laughter, the young nurses she mentored, the women who found hope again because she refused to stay broken. Her life had turned into something meaningful, and she didn't need to prove that to anyone. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Elena Voss stepped in, smiling. "The mayor's here for your speech, Zanil. They want to hear about your journey." Zanil stood, straightened her jacket, and picked up the small silver locket she always wore, a gift from her late mother that read, "Rise quietly." She looked in the mirror, and there it was, the same calm smile she'd worn the night she walked away. But this time it wasn't hiding pain. It was peace. As she stepped out into the sunlight, Zanil whispered to herself, "Sometimes saying okay isn't giving up. It's the first step toward everything they thought you'd never have." Do you think Zanil made the right choice by walking away from the people who broke her? Or should she have tried to rebuild with her brother? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories like this move you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next one.